we were talking about history because I love to talk about history, and we got to Jefferson, and I find Jefferson extremely fascinating. And I started talking about Jefferson, and slowly we get into this area of slavery and salamanders and this stuff, and she says to me, straight face, she said, yeah, but Jefferson was a benevolent slave owner. And I said, I don't know what that means. That's exactly what I said. I said, I don't know what that means, because, and I said this to her, I said, I've never heard anyone being called a benevolent rapist. Never heard anyone be called a benevolent kidnapper. Like, never heard that before. This person was benevolently held against their will. I've never heard that before. And she said absolutely nothing. She said absolutely nothing. She put her head down and she said nothing. And after about a minute or so of silence, I said, okay, let's move on to the next topic. But it made me realize that this woman who had just retired not too long ago had been teaching this kind of benevolent history of America to generation after generation of students. And so sometimes I feel like, haven't I already had this conversation? Like, do I really need to say this again? I don't think I need to say this again. But after that conversation, I was like, back to the lab. There's so much more that has to be done. So, and that's, I mean, and that's really that whole project on 20th Street. It's just me looking at history and sort of like, you know, literally pulling back the curtain and saying, but what about that?
And I've heard you describe how what you do and how you see the work of other artists and painters in particular as a work of illusion, as a work starting with a canvas. And I can't help but find this just beyond compelling in terms of what you just described, in terms of pulling back the layers. Do you get pushback on not so much the method but the content? I mean, I know that artists can do whatever they want to do.
Oh,
I'm curious, how does it sit either in your graduate training? At some point you clearly decided to break some of the rules.
I mean, I can't take it personal because graduate school is about critique, right? So it doesn't really matter what you do. To a certain degree, your professors are supposed to critique you. And so, in retrospect, it made me stronger, so I'm not mad. That said, there were a lot of conversations that I felt like I had to have that other people didn't have to have, but whatever, you get used to that. As you were talking about, for me, I've always realized that painting is illusion. You know, that's a flat canvas. There's nothing there. There's no face there. There's no nose there. There's no eyes there. That's illusion. And so when I started to think about these alterations, these interventions that I was going to do to the canvas, I wanted to do something that was real, something that was happening in the physical world, something that sort of stepped into your space. And so rather than, you know, I remember one of the first times it happened, I was thinking, okay, I want to make a painting about torture, but I don't want to just depict that through this window. I want to torture the painting. What does it look like to torture the painting? And in that particular case, it meant shredding the painting into hundreds of pieces. But it had to be, for me, to take it to the next level, it had to be physical. And then I was looking at something that moved me, that I was compelled by, that kept me thinking. What I find is, even for me looking at it, even knowing that she's fully realized underneath there, I start imagining what's going on for her, what's under there, what am I missing? So it engages you. I mean, we as humans, we have this thing where what we can't have is what we want. And so I sort of utilize that to get people to keep looking, because it's what makes me keep looking.
So was it school that turned you onto history? When did you have that light bulb moment?
No, from the beginning. I mean, I was adopted when I was 15, and so that was a really important time for me. But for some reason in my head, before that, my memory got wiped somehow. There's lots of years that I just don't remember. And I don't know why. And there are these highlights of negative things that happened specifically with my father. And then there's like years where I have my mother would say, "Don't you remember that?" I have no idea.
I'm thinking more about academic history, meaning history of the nation.
The point is, that's why. Like, my interest in history is not just about American history or like world history, it's history, personal history, it's all of it. They're all connected in some way or another. And history becomes important to us when we understand how it affects us directly, right? So if we're talking about whatever war, if we understand the way that it impacts our day-to-day, then it's interesting. So whether it's like what happened with my father, which connects to the criminal justice system, which connects to convict leasing, which connects to the history of slavery, you know, it starts with this very personal thing, and then it just works its way to get broader and broader.